All right, Self Made episode 126. Got another very cool guest for you today. This is Ryan Castle, owner of Castle Cleans out in Sydney. He's been a listener of the podcast for a while. I think it's actually how he came to know about me, which is cool. And he's been in my Booked Out Cleaners program. So it's great to have you on the podcast today to chat, Ryan. I'd love to hear about your genesis in the cleaning game. Can you tell us a bit about how you started and how this all came to be?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me on. It's a full circle moment for me. I actually started my cleaning business because of this podcast. So to be on it now is definitely a full circle moment for me. So I was
That's
working
awesome.
I was working 4 jobs. This is about 2 years ago now. Before I started, I was working about 4 jobs. I was working at a marketing agency, which kind of sparked my interest in business and in marketing. And I just thought, you know what's a pretty low cost, low barrier to entry business? And then cleaning just popped into my head. I think my first ever podcast that I listened to about cleaning was this podcast about how to hire staff. My plan was to basically find a few contracts around town and just subcontract them and get passive income, which we both know is just complete bullshit. But I learned my lesson quickly and just went full steam ahead, joined Booked Out Cleaners and never looked back.
That's awesome. And so you're mainly in the commercial space, is that right? You don't really deal with any residential clients?
Yeah, well, we started out doing just residential. I was, doing the cleans myself. And then I just had more of an interest in commercial cleaning. But actually, recently we've started to take on a lot more residential clients. Like this month, I think we've got about 6 or 7 new resi clients, and that's not really my long-term goal to be a residential company. But if we can do it, if we have the staff for it and have that capacity, I'm more than happy to take them on. It's great for cash flow, and we have some really solid clients. So yeah.
Yeah, nice. And so what's the split between commercial and residential in your client base at the moment? Is it like 80 or 90% commercial?
It's about 60-40, I'd say. 60,
Okay, that's pretty good.
Commercial.
And how is the cash flow with commercial? Do you have pretty good payment terms with your commercial clients at the moment?
Yeah, the payment terms are quite solid. It's usually about a week. Some of them are fortnight. Where it gets tricky is in construction cleaning, which is completely separate. But that's where the payment terms can be a pain in the ass. But I use pay.com to pay staff through our business credit card, which helps cash flow tremendously. So I think I learned about that off this podcast as well. So there you go.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, pay.com is great because you can, obviously, if you've got cash flow issues, or even if you don't, it's good to be able to put payroll on a credit card, and that gives you like a 60 to 90 day buffer to actually make that payment while you're still waiting for cash to come in. So, and obviously you get to accumulate points on the Amex, which is great. But so you're doing construction cleaning now. Tell us about that. How did you segue into that, and how are you getting leads? Because I know a lot of people want to get into that space and they struggle to actually find the work. Is it more of like you've built relationships with a builder or two and they're supplying you consistent work, or what's your strategy at the moment for that?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. 1 or 2 relationships and just constant work from those 2 relationships. Because at the start, when I first started this business, I had a mate that still is the business manager of a fit out company, a commercial fit out company. So they do, office fit outs, refurbs, all that kind of stuff. So he wanted to give me a shot when he knew that I started a cleaning company. And so I had that relationship from day one. And then I've made 1 or 2 more connections through him. And at one point I was actively reaching out to more builders and getting more work. And that was through cold calls. So just put it on Google, fit out companies, construction companies near me, just giving them a call. And they were actually quite open to giving me work. The only thing is finding trustworthy builders is quite hard. I've been screwed around a little bit, invoices not paid, a year plus. So I've definitely learnt my lesson there. And yeah,
Wow.
I definitely caution people who are wanting to get into construction cleans, just make sure you know who you're dealing with, because yeah, it can get quite dodgy real quick.
Yeah, I know a guy who has done construction cleaning, and he's had to void some invoices in the tens of thousands because a building company that he'd done work for went under, and that's just it's not a very fun experience, I can imagine. So it can be a risky game with the builders, and that's why the trust aspect is so important, which is why also the relationships are so important too. So it's good that you've got those on lock. And going back to the cold calls, I remember sort of when you first joined Booked Out Cleaners, I know we talked about this. I think at the time you were trying to grow the initial client base with cold calling. And what was your return like back then when you were doing cold calling with a VA and also just doing it yourself, as opposed to now if you're still doing it? And what are some of the things that you found were working versus what wasn't working in the early stages?
Yeah, well, exactly right. So we had a Filipino VA doing it, similar to how you were at one point, and I found that, like in my market in Sydney, that was a mistake to get someone from the Philippines to do the cold call outreach, because unfortunately, people hear Filipino calling and they instantly just think, oh, this must be a sales call or a scam call. That's just reality. And yeah, so I learned my lesson there. We didn't really see too much return there. We got a few clients out of it, but it was after spending quite a lot of money on it and a lot of time as well, like me scraping the leads and obviously the VAs doing the cold calls themselves. So yeah, that kind of went to waste a little bit. I then picked up the cold calls there myself, which I saw just a way better return because, being from the area and knowing about the market, and when they, have all these questions about us, I'm, as the director, able to answer, all the questions they've got. So it was much better that way. I found that we're getting a lot more quotes. I'd say 3 or 4, a week consistently. And that was with maybe 1 or 2 short shifts of cold calling a week. And then recently we've picked it back up again, and I've got now a mate who's helping me do it, and I just pay him commission only. And yeah, we just both pump out the cold calls and finding some good returns on it.
Yeah, nice. It's good when you can get someone on commission because obviously they're working on a performance incentive. Similar to you, I had a VA doing cold calls for me around a year and a half ago, and I used to listen to all the call recordings because in our call software we have a feature to be able to record them, and I would listen in on the calls, and pretty much what you were saying, you can tell straight away when the person on the other end picks up that they're just completely disengaged as soon as they hear like that Filipino accent, and they just want to get off the phone as quick as possible. And also to what you were saying, as soon as they have any sort of question about a really specific thing in the business or about the service, the VA, for the most part, struggles to answer it unless they've been working in the business for years and they really understand it inside out. It's just hard for them to have that off the top knowledge that you're going to have. And so I think anyone that does cold calling, it really has to be the business owner, unless you're like really, really big and your time is worth even more than the potential return you can get from cold calling. You're always going to see the best results from just doing it yourself. And I mean, I know some people that have success with getting VAs to cold call, but generally speaking, you're always going to have a higher return if you're the one doing it. So I know a lot of people get uncomfortable about it. And it's also one of those like really mentally challenging things because you can dial 200-300 people a day and get nowhere. So when you were doing it, do you know a rough percentage of, like, if you did 100 cold calls, how many would actually allow you to come and do a quote? And then from that, how many customers would you get?
Yeah, so we were tracking it through Go Ahead Level and Google Sheets. So we had good metrics there. I think when I was doing it, it was about 10% booking rate. So out of 100 calls or 100 leads, I would book about 10 quotes, 10 walkthroughs.
It's really good, actually. Yeah.
And then when the VA was doing it, it was about one or two. So
Yeah.
quite a big contrast difference there. And in terms of actually winning the quotes, I found that the ones that came from my cold calling versus the VAs, it was like night and day difference. A lot of the leads I actually went to visit from the VA's cold calls, they would start off by telling me, "Oh, your assistant or your cold caller is very salesy," and that was how the first interaction with them. So instantly off the bat, I had to really sell them to get our services. So that was kind of a big shift when I started cold calling myself. I found when I walked into the places when I was doing the cold calls, it was a lot easier to to sell them, and not just sell them, but actually create rapport with them and build a connection with them, like they're like my friend basically. So yeah, I think in terms of metrics, so what 10% booking rate, and then out of that, I closed about one every five, so 20%.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So 10% booking rate from the cold calls and then 20% conversion on those quotes.
Mm-hmm. Is that what?
And that's really 2%? Good considering all your spending is your own time to pick up and dial. And these are obviously contracts that could be worth, 6 figures a year. What's one of the biggest contracts you've landed from a cold call? Is it like an ongoing office clean that's a couple of days a week? Mm-hmm. What sort of clients were you getting from that?
Yeah, it was the office ones. We've got a good medical center that we picked up from that. That was actually from the VA's cold calls. That was one of the clients that came through there. But yeah, majority of the other ones are just office cleans, 2-3 days a week. We've actually got one who's starting in a couple of weeks. They're a local swim school that needs cleaning 7 days a week, which is, I'd say, the biggest one that's come from my cold calls.
Yeah, nice. And so you've got that locked in?
Yeah, that starts in about 3 weeks. Just got confirmation today, actually.
Very nice.
So.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Yeah, we love those 7 day a week ones. It's great when you can go in literally every day, because the level of cleaning is so minimal, because it's being done every single day. And so the staff that we have on our jobs that are every day, they love doing it. It's the ones that are like once a week or once a fortnight that it requires a bit more, elbow grease and a bit more manual labor, that we get a bit of a less positive feedback from the staff. So it's always great, and it's a win-win because you make a lot more money, obviously, from the ones that are multiple days a week. So very nice. And I think we talked about this when you had your VA doing cold calls, like a year and a half ago, where there's only a finite amount of businesses that you can actually call in your serviceable area. And while it may be working, and while a VA may be getting a small percentage of them to say yes, once you've exhausted that list, that's it. You can't really call them again for another, 6 to 12 months. And so the difference between you doing it yourself and a VA doing it isn't just that extra percentage, but in absolute terms, you're actually able to get so much more out of it, because once the VA goes through that list and you've only gotten, a handful of bookings, that's kind of it. Whereas you've gone and done it, and, with medical centers, there's only going to be a few dozen in whatever serviceable area you do. So percentage wise, it doesn't really matter, because, you're going to have a much better return doing it yourself. And as you've seen now that you have done it, you're getting much better results, and you're actually able to get through the list without just exhausting all the leads. So, but a lot of people are just scared to do it because cold calling, it seems scary. And kind of what you were saying, you can expect a 10% or less booking rate. 10% is actually very good. I would say most people can expect around 5%, if not less. And so that means you have to pick up the phone and call 100 places just to get 5 people to even let you come and quote. And then that's not a definite yes either, because then you have to go there and then get them to say yes to the quote. So it is a numbers game. It's definitely a mental game. And I think that's the main reason that people just don't really do it. They get psyched out by like the first couple of no's, but you really have to get good at hearing the word no if you're going to be doing the cold outreach game. So do you tend to do much objection handling? Like if you do hear a no, do you try to sell them any further than that, or do you just kind of leave it there? And what is your sales process like? Do you find that when you go and do these quotes, it's more of just a general conversation? Do you feel like you have to sell, or does a lot of the selling for you happen before you even meet them, just with like follow-ups and your website and everything like that?
Yeah, so the in-person interactions definitely is more salesy than warm leads that come to us from whether it be Google or Google Ads, anything like that. So it's definitely more of a sell, but at the same time, because I have already spoken to them, let's say the day before on the phone, it's not as hard as some people might expect. And I think the trick is, so a lot of people, especially in my area in Sydney, a lot of people do cold call, right? And it's people that just pump numbers, cold call every single day. So they kind of get into this, I guess, like monotone scripts, and they actually have no way to really engage the prospect. So, the prospect will answer the phone, they'll just say the same boring script, and then they'll get hung up on, right? So I think that if you are going to cold call, having something just straight out of the gate on your script that gets the lead interested, or creates something like a funny moment, or just something similar to that where the lead or the prospect just puts their guard down and you can actually be human with them rather than it being such a salesy interaction. That's what I've found has worked best for me. With the VAs, they weren't doing that, and that's partly my fault because they're working off a script that I gave them, and it just sounded so salesy. So I think making that change was definitely a big shift in the increase in the booking rate and also the actual interactions I have in the walkthroughs.
Yeah, I think as long as you have a strong opener and a strong close, like you can pretty much just ad-lib the rest, everything in between it. Because like you said, as soon as you're going off a script for everything, it just sounds manufactured, and everyone's so accustomed to getting cold call these days. And as soon as they know it's a cold call and it's a sales call, then they just disengage, and their main goal is to just get you off the phone. And you'll actually find that a lot of people will just agree to a quote just because they feel like they can't even say no to get out of the cold call. So I've seen people that have VAs cold calling that get a lot of bookings, but then they convert none of them because they actually get there and they're like, well, we don't actually really want to switch our cleaners or anything, but your VA or your receptionist or whoever it was pushed so hard to get this booking, which is another reason as well. Like I believe that the owner should be doing it because you're going to have that intuition, to not push for the leads that aren't going to be a good fit for you. So did you have moments like that as well, where your VA like just really pushed so hard to get a booking that just flat out wasn't a good fit?
Bro, that just brought back some PTSD moments for sure. That was exactly
I can imagine,
what I was dealing with. Like, I think I said it just before, but the first interaction I would have with these prospects was, oh, your VA is very salesy, or just something along those lines, and just kill the sale from the start. And I had to, try my best to be their best friend just to get them to look at the quote, essentially. So, yeah. And with objection handling that you mentioned before, there is some objection handling on the call, but it's also a bit of luck as well. So, like you said, it is a numbers game. Some places might, be actively looking for new cleaners, and then like that does come down to a bit of luck on your part. But yeah, sometimes you might have to, do some objection handling. I do have a script that I work off, but it's vague and I don't follow it word for word because then it'll start sounding like I'm
like it's more of a framework, is it?
Yeah, it's like a framework that we've built out in Notion, similar to I think what you were doing, and yeah, we just follow it through. The main thing that I've found is changing tones and not just speaking at one pitch, one pace, that's where the prospect essentially falls asleep on the phone or just wants to hang up. So yeah, I think the biggest thing is tonality rather than the script itself.
Yeah, tonality is really, really important. And something kind of on the topic of what you said earlier about not everyone you call is going to be looking for a cleaner actively at that time. And so it can be a case of right place, right time for a lot of these people. And in terms of like the buying pyramid, there's only a very small amount of people that are going to be ready to buy what you're selling right now. And the majority of people, like 80% or 60% rather, would be potentially looking to buy your services in future, but not right now. So it's always good to ask probing questions like, do you have a cleaner at the moment, which most commercial places do? And if they say yes, and they're sort of pushing back on a quote, then you can always offer something else like a fallback, like a comparison quote, which I know is really good. That's worked well for us. We always offer a comparison just to get our foot in the door, and then we can actually go there and speak to the client. Sometimes you can win off a comparison quote because they obviously compare it to what they're currently getting, and they're like, well, this is black and white. This is a lot better. But at the very least, you can keep that lead in an email list, and you can just send them, emails and SMSs and call them every couple of weeks or every couple of months, just to keep at the top of their consciousness so that when they are ready, when they move up into that top of the pyramid where they are ready to buy, then the first person they're going to think of is you. So I know that's something similar to what you've done, where you've offered comparison quotes, and because the majority of people that you call are already going to have cleaners. Some of them aren't going to be happy. So if they just get a call from another one, they might just be ready to go right then and there. But a lot of them won't be ready. And so you do have to change up your strategy a little bit and have some methods for like a long-term play. And I think a lot of marketing efforts that people are doing would on paper look a lot better if they just extend the timeline for actually getting that client. This is very true for flyers, which is a bit off topic, but I've done flyer runs 2-3 years ago in Perth that have only just started to really convert. We've gotten 3 clients in the last month from a flyer drop that I did 2 years ago, and they just kept it somewhere like on their fridge or in a drawer. And they all said literally like as soon as we were ready to get a cleaner, your flyer was the first one that we went to because we got it ages ago, but we just weren't looking for a cleaner at the time. So, but I think the same can be said about a lot of things. And most people that are in this game just don't look far enough ahead, and they just aren't willing to delay gratification. So a lot of the time you just need to be in it for the long haul with this. I know that you've been very disciplined about that, and you're definitely good at that. And do you think that has something to do, because you're an athlete yourself. You're a state champion kickboxer, which is really cool. I got to watch your fight where you became state champion, and I know a lot of high level athletes that tend to do well in business, and I think it is because of that like drive and that discipline, but also just that ability to extend the time horizon for getting to where they want to be and understanding that process. So do you think that kind of discipline and that ambition has translated into business from fighting?
Well, thank you for your kind words there, and thank you for tuning in to watch the fight. Yeah, definitely the ambition does carry over. I think that it was a bit of a delay, and don't get me wrong, some weeks in business I am, pretty stressed out, and questioning myself, and all that. I think a lot of business owners go through something similar, but yeah, I think the ambition and the discipline does carry over. With the cold calls, that was and is, I'd say, the biggest thing where I constantly have to, for lack of a better term, lock back in, because if I take some time off it and I have to restart again, it does get a bit daunting. So yeah, I think just being consistent and having discipline, even if you don't want to do it, that's just going to be the biggest thing that you can do. And also on that point you said before about, clients might not, want to push forward right now or move forward right now. we've actually had, so one of our longest clients, we cold called them, and my VA cold called them. This would have been a year and a half ago-ish. And yeah, so we cold called them. They didn't want cleaners. They said they had a cleaner. They were very happy. And that was the end of that. And a week later, they called me on my mobile. I don't know how they got it, but they called me on my mobile saying that their cleaner was retiring. So yeah, they must have remembered the name that, like the company name the VA said, and yeah, they called me a week later, and the week after that, they became our client, and we've had them ever since.
There you go. That's just testament to what we said. Like sometimes it is just right place, right time, and most of the time it isn't going to be. So as long as you can hold on to that lead and continue to remarket to them, or you can get lucky and they can just remember and seek you out themselves, like that's when you really start to win. So that's very cool. But take us back a bit. So when did you actually start this business? Was it around 2 and a bit years ago?
Yeah, no, it was, what month was it? So it was,
So I think you were one of the early members of Booked Out Cleaners, and that must have been 2024, maybe August, I'd like to say.
I think it was, no, I don't think it was that far. I think it was less than, it was about, because we've had that client that I was just speaking about for about 1.5 years, I think. So it must have been just before that. So maybe a year and 9 months, I think.
Yeah, cool. And you've had a lot of growth in that time as well, which is great. So when you joined Booked Out Cleaners, were you already in the cleaning business, or had you not even started at that point?
I had started. The only thing was I didn't have any employees, didn't really know much about marketing. I think the clients that I had came from flyers that you posted on TikTok. So yeah, I was using your material from the very start. And then once I got those clients, I'm like, okay, let's go all in here. And then yeah, I joined the school program, Booked Out Cleaners, and since then, I mean, things have literally just exploded and doubled and doubled and doubled, time after time. So yeah, very, very grateful that.
Yeah, well, your timelines are getting. Yeah, and I appreciate that. And your timeline for getting to where you are now, I just wanted to add, is pretty incredible. Like the amount of growth you've had in less than 2 years is really phenomenal. And I think it is a big testament to your ability as an operator. It isn't just about what you know, it's also how you apply it. So you've been like diligent enough to do that yourself. And I mean, hats off to you, man. You've done really well, and it's cool to see what you're doing. And I know that you're sort of at that inflection point now where you're just going to continue to compound that growth, and it's going to be great. And you've got a team now, which is awesome. So you've got, 6 people on your team?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so 6 people.
Is that about it? Yeah. So
so we've got 2 on the resi side and the rest on commercial and construction.
Nice. And what are your plans now? Do you want to build that team a bit more and potentially get a manager in place, or do you want to be that manager that kind of just orchestrates everything? What are your plans for the business over the next 12 months and beyond?
Mm-hmm. I think definitely getting a manager in place is the goal. The issue that I have is balancing business and also the sport that I do, and making time for both. And if I have a manager in place, I can focus more time on growing the business, less on the operations, and then I can also enjoy and compete in the sport that I love. So that is definitely the goal. The timeline for that, I'm not too sure. Definitely within the next year or 2, that would be great. But yeah, that's definitely where I want to go.
Yeah, I can imagine it would be hard to juggle. I come from a bit of a sporting background. I used to play high-level soccer, so I was training 4 or 5 nights a week, playing on the weekend. And I mean, I can't imagine trying to run a business now while also doing that if I was still doing it. So how do you manage to balance both the business and your sport, especially when things can be pretty sporadic in the business, as we all know, like clients can cancel, people can call in sick, you can have a busy week, a slow week. How do you manage the constant ups and downs of business with what you do?
Well, my staff are the main reason that I'm able to do that because I can rely on them quite heavily. And yeah, I've got a good team that has my support as well. And yeah, it is tough balancing it out, especially during a fight camp where I'm, training like 10 times a week. So 2 sessions on some days, it does get quite tough. And there is a sacrifice there that I'm not going to be able to grow the business as fast. And there might be some little things that get missed in the business. And look, at the moment, I'm okay with that. I'm willing to make that trade. How long I'm able to do that for, I'm not sure. But yeah, balancing it is quite tough, but it's manageable for the time being.
Yeah, well, look, done is always better than perfect. So, I mean, you seem to be pretty good at balancing those things. And like you said, some things may get missed, but they're going to be small. And as long as things are running and people are happy, that's all that really matters. I've certainly had times where I'm really busy with the business, like years ago when I was in that kind of grind phase. And I'm still also trying to have a social life and be present with family and other commitments and stuff like that. And sometimes you do just have to pull back a bit from the business, but still do enough to just make sure that what's needing to get done is getting done, and just kind of relinquish a bit of that perfectionist mindset, which I think a lot of business owners have, and just realizing that done is better than perfect is certainly the way to go. And so that's cool. So you're in a good spot now. You've obviously how did you develop your hiring system now, because you've got a good team? Did you go through the hiring module in Booked Out Cleaners? Was that the main thing that you were looking for inside there when you joined?
That was the thing that I was looking for, and that has been literally the only thing I've used to get good staff, whether it be the ads I put out on Seek, the actual training itself, the checklists, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I got from Booked Out Cleaners, because the first podcast I listened to of yours was how to hire a good cleaner, or how to hire good staff, and I think it was that one that basically drove me to Booked Out Cleaners for that reason. And obviously there's been a bunch of other stuff in the program that I've enjoyed and used, but I think that one was the main one that I was looking for, and the one that's helped me the most ultimately.
That's great. And that seems to be a common thread so far with everyone I've had on here. They've all said that they were able to grow a team. They went from not having a team to then, some people now have a team of 12 to 15, all from just applying what's in that module. And, they'd tried hiring staff before and they had bad experiences. And I know there's some people that almost gave up on hiring altogether, but as soon as you have like a proven framework that you can just apply, it makes the process so much easier and actually manageable. And so now you've got that infrastructure in place to be able to scale, which is great. What sort of goal do you have in terms of like team size and revenue? Like, how far do you want to take the business? Do you see yourself expanding into other areas? Do you see yourself broadening the service offerings and going into other types of cleaning? What's the sort of long-term play with what you're actually doing?
Yeah, so the long-term play is definitely to stay in commercial and focus on recurring revenue. That's just been the thing that has driven me so far, and I believe that's going to be the thing that's going to keep me going. So I've definitely got revenue numbers in mind of where I want to get to. There's not a particular point where I'm going to, step off after I hit, X amount of revenue. But yeah, I think it's just maintaining steady growth and continue my learnings, and also making mistakes and learning from them in business, just continuing down that path. And yeah, because I really enjoy the game of business, because at the end of the day, it is a game essentially. And one of my favorite people that I like to listen to is Alex Hormozy. I know you're a big fan of him. His podcast, The Game, is all about business, and I just love the game of business. So yeah, I've definitely got long-term goals. There's not really a team size that I want to get to particularly. I guess a team that supports whatever revenue numbers that I want to achieve.
Yeah, cool. And everyone's going to have different ideas of what, their autonomy looks like and where they want to take things. And that'll look different at every stage of the journey. Like I remember, I think when I was in a similar spot to you in terms of team size and revenue, like I didn't have revenue goals or any goals for how I wanted to grow the team. I just loved the fact that it was growing and that I was like finally in the game, and I felt like I was making progress and had that momentum. So it's funny how similar we were kind of thinking about that. And now my goal has shifted towards team size. So I don't actually have like a revenue goal. For me, it's more about team. Like I want to grow to 100 people by the end of the year, which we'll certainly be able to do, I think. And then next year it'll be like, 150 and so on. And the revenue kind of scales up with team size because that's just how it goes. You can't take on clients without staff. So that's our metric for success. And you talked about, failures a bit. Obviously failure is a prerequisite for success, and both of us are no stranger to failure. So what are some of the mistakes that you have made early on that have taught you lessons, or things that just kind of shaped you into the business owner that you are now?
I would say the biggest mistake that I've made continuously is taking on clients that don't want to pay what we are worth, right? And just taking them on because of, how much revenue they might provide us, yet very little profit, and not realizing that at the start, it might look like a big grand number, but at the end of the day, we're not really taking home much in the way of profit. So that's been the biggest one. And those clients as well are always the ones that just give you the biggest headaches, and you really just end up really resenting them. So that's probably the biggest mistake that I've made, over and over again, unfortunately. So yeah,
it's very true that the clients that don't pay enough are always the ones that give you the most amount of grief. It's so funny. Like for whatever reason, the people that pay less and are conditioned to paying less, they cancel more, they complain more, they obviously are resistant to price changes and market changes. And so I've seen cleaning businesses in the residential space get like pretty much wiped out by interest rate rises and, fuel crises and things like that. And it's because they're catering to that market of people that is, in that lower value category. And it's fine. Like there is a market for that. There's obviously a market for people that just kind of clean for, cash in hand or $30-40 an hour, but that's just not the game we're playing. And you don't want to be taking on those clients, especially in the commercial space. It can be a pretty big trap because, like, as you said, you look at the vanity metrics like customers gained and revenue, and on paper it looks like you're doing well, but the one thing that matters, which is profit, is like pretty much non-existent after all your expenses. And I had this first realization when I took on my first gym cleaning contract. So this was like $1,200 a week to clean this gym back in 2021, and it seemed great. Obviously, a lot of revenue, nearly $60K a year, but the actual hourly rate was so low that after I paid my staff to go in there at 4 a.m, at whatever rate that was, like there was really no profit left over. They were always complaining. They were always giving us grief. And as soon as I just sat down and realized, like, this is a $1,200 a week client, I'm probably making like $50 to $100 profit, but I'm also spending all this time micromanaging the clean. It's just not worth it. And I think, again, it's a big trap that commercial cleaners fall into because the numbers are so much bigger and the stakes seem so much higher. But as soon as you get your head wrapped around the real numbers in your business, that's going to give you the confidence to be able to grow predictably and also to scale properly and profitably, obviously. So you've obviously gotten there now, which is great. And I know that you're very in tune with your numbers, which is really important. What are some of the things that you're actively tracking every week and every month in your business?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that I'm tracking is obviously profit, and there's a few spreadsheets that I use to do that, and all of them I've gotten from you in the Book That Cleaner space. So, whether it be calculating how much I need to charge a new client, how much profit we're actually making from each of our existing clients, and then from that, seeing which ones, we might need to cut down the time that we're there. We might need to increase their price. So yeah, I'd say those are the biggest things, and also just a client tracker. Seeing how many clients we're signing on month to month, and yeah, comparing that from last year or last quarter, whatever it may be. So yeah, those are the things that we're tracking, and I'm very grateful that I was able to get those spreadsheets from the community, because I'm, on them all the time, and it's just been such a blessing to use them.
Yeah, awesome. No, I'm the same. I'm like always checking the numbers. I was using the spreadsheets up until a few months ago. Now that I've developed this platform and I've got it in there now, which you'll be getting access to when that platform comes out for the new thing we're relaunching. But yeah, the numbers are so cool. And it gives you like a lot of confidence as well, and clarity, just knowing how the business is tracking. And even when you're in those ruts where you feel like things aren't going as well, you can just look back at the numbers, and that's like your one source of truth for like, oh, everything actually is going okay. And also when things aren't going as well, and that's being reflected in the numbers, then you have a clear framework where you can reverse engineer why things aren't going well. Like I know one of the spreadsheets that is in Booked Out Cleaners, which you use, is the payroll tracker. So you can track like the gross profit of each of your employees individually. And that's one of my favorite things that we track. It's basically just their revenue minus their payslip, but there's obviously all the like granular metrics in there as well. And so we're able to see underperforming staff. And then when we see that metric, then we can ask the question, like, why is their profit low? Then we go through a discovery process of like, maybe they're at jobs that are just too difficult to get done on time, or they need a bit more training to help them clean quicker. And because we've got those numbers to refer to, and we can see that on a dashboard, that's giving us like a big insight into what actually needs to change in the business. So it's just great having the numbers, and obviously it kind of gamifies it too. Like I know my personal favorite thing that I track is just how many customers we gain and lose, and what the recurring revenue added is every month. I just love seeing the numbers go up because it's like a game. I'm sure you're the same. And yeah, it's just another way that you can just get that clarity and have that peace of mind knowing that you're headed in this direction. And that just makes the ship a lot easier to steer. So yeah, it's really cool. Another common thread between everyone I've spoken to is that they do know their numbers and they're actively tracking all these things. So people listening, do with that info what you will. But yeah, it's
If I could
it's obviously a lot of fun too. Yeah, sure.
So just with one of the spreadsheets, you'd actually be very surprised, and I'm sure that you've dealt with this situation. You don't actually realize some clients are actually losing you money when you thought they were making you money. I think that's been the biggest thing, the biggest unlock for me, is seeing, oh, this client that we're charging X amount per week for, we're actually making like 2% net profit off them. Like, what's going on here? And then that way we can actually dive into what the issue is. And yeah, like without that, I would it's quite hard to know your numbers for each client, especially when you've got like a decent amount of clients. And from your point of view, the amount of clients that you guys service, having something like that is just a lifesaver. So yeah, I can definitely recommend to anyone listening to invest time to knowing your numbers.
Yeah, 100%. And it's only a problem that gets bigger as you grow. Because like you said, when you've got all these clients, it's very easy for some of them to fly under the radar when they're not making you money, and you're just not going to see that because you see the overall revenue and the overall profit, which may look good, but there may be like the bottom 10% of your clients, which are in the red, if you just literally got rid of those, you would actually increase your profit and, or by decreasing your expenses essentially. So having those numbers is essential for being able to do that. Because without that, you're pretty much just flying blind, and it's more of a gamble, really. And I know Australians love to gamble, so for some people that may be okay, but I personally can't imagine running a business without tracking all these different metrics. It just gives me the peace of mind, and I think it's been pretty paramount in me being able to get to where I am now. Because as you would know, you see me in the Q&As and the courses I put out, I track pretty much every possible number in the business. I've got VAs that help with that. I've got software set up to do it because it is really important. And so yeah, again, anyone listening to this, if you're not already tracking your numbers, you should just start with the lowest hanging fruit. Start tracking like your cost to acquire a customer, lifetime value, all these different things. Start small. It can get overwhelming because there's so many different things you could be tracking. Doesn't mean you should be, but you just got to start with the low hanging fruit. So
speaking of cost to acquire a customer, that's one metric that I've really started to double down on lately. And I realized that was quite far away from where it should be. So that's, yeah, after deep diving into that, I've realized that in terms of marketing, we really need to dial things in because it can just get away from you. And especially when you pump money into something like Google Ads, which we were doing at one point, you can be surprised with how much across the board customers can be to acquire. Obviously, with the cold calling, it's a bit different. It's just your time which you're giving away, but not all of our clients come from cold calls. So yeah, it is interesting to see that number, and also, like you said, lifetime value or lifetime gross profit as well. Two very important metrics that we are starting to focus a lot more of our focus on.
Yeah, and a thing people don't realize is, a lot of the businesses out there in the cleaning space, a lot of them grow organically, so they don't have ad spend and they don't have to worry about their cost to acquire a customer, because for them it's pretty much just free. It's like they're trading their time to get customers, and they may be charging a bit less, but they're still making profit, which is fine. But then as you start to grow the business, eventually you can't just rely on organic anymore. You get to an inflection point where churn outpaces what you're bringing in, and you just need to turn on that paid marketing mechanism. And because they've gone that whole time without any paid marketing, as soon as they realize what the actual cost of that is, like Google Ads, for example, is not cheap. Like you can expect to spend thousands a month on that. As soon as they have to turn that tap on, a lot of people will just see their profit completely vanish, because all the profit they had from what they thought was a profitable business they were running just goes to getting clients. And so I've seen people that have needed to increase their prices quite massively once they've realized that once they've started paying for ads, their cost to acquire a customer is pretty much, it's like more than what they're actually making from that client in the end. So it's a very important thing to distinguish early on. Even if you are profitable, like what would the profit look like if you had to factor in paid ads? Or if you're solo, what would that profit look like if you had to factor in the cost of an employee and all the other running costs of a business? These are things that you need to be proactive in thinking about, because otherwise they just come back to bite you later. So it's a good point there. Are there any other things that you've kind of learned along the way in your business journey which have surprised you or have just become like core principles of everything you do? Like obviously knowing numbers is one, but are there any other small lessons you learned along the way?
I think just being kind to people, even those clients we're talking about before that, really give you a headache about the simplest and stupidest things. I think just being kind is important, and it'll save you in the long run. The last thing we need is a bad Google review. We actually got one from when the VA was doing cold calls. Someone just, wasn't happy that a Filipino called them in the middle of the day, And yeah, some people are just like that, but we have to be nice about it. And that person actually removed their review after I called them up and apologized and did all of that. So yeah, I think just being kind to people is good. It'll save you in the long run, and you might not really see it that way, but it's yeah, I believe it's quite important.
Yeah, I think that's a very mature point. Like I've always tried to kind of embody that in the business I run. I try to like understand that some people might not be having the best day or the best week, and you know they could take it out on the cleaner, or they could just be a bit rude, and you might just take that at face value and be like, this is a rude customer, I don't like them, yada yada yada. But just having like that element of compassion in the business goes a long way, especially when you're trying to build a team. Like having that empathy and that understanding with people, but also having a balance of like, you do still need to be a leader, you still need to be a boss. And so there is a fine line there. You don't want to be too ruthless, but you also don't want to be, too approachable or too, I don't know, what's the word? You don't want to be like someone that kind of just gets walked all over, which is, but it's definitely true. And I think what you said as well about Google reviews is never worth, no amount of money and no amount of grief is worth getting a 1-star review. So it's a big ego thing as well. I think we sometimes just need to set our pride aside, and even if you aren't in the wrong, sometimes it is good to just apologize and sweep things under the rug, and be diplomatic so that you can avoid confrontations and conflicts, because those Google reviews stick. As I know, I'm currently spending a fair bit of money to get 2 reviews removed. I think I talked about this in a previous episode, but that is still an ongoing process, and that situation has cost me a lot of money. It's probably cost me money that I never had, because people have seen these reviews and then probably didn't go ahead with booking with us. And if you don't know about that, a couple episodes ago I talked about this. Long story short, we got 2 1-star reviews from vacate clean I did ages ago. Had to refund the client. Still got the 1-star reviews, lost all the time I spent doing the clean, whatever. But anyway, it's never worth it, bottom line. So yeah, being nice and just like a kind human goes a very long way, especially with staff, which you would know as well. Have you found, like as a leader, I don't know if you've ever managed teams before, but have you found any strategies or any things that have really worked for you as now an employer dealing with staff? Mm-hmm. Like obviously you'd be a very different leader now to what you were when you started hiring. So take us through that kind of journey of getting your first employee to where you are now and what's changed.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that. Something just popped into my head on that sequence you were just talking about. Yeah, I think that being patient with staff has been the I guess the, what would you call it, the backbone of my leadership. A lesson that I learned from, I honestly can't remember who, but being patient in terms of, if you're angry at one of your employees, they might have been in the wrong for something, or been, maybe they've lashed out at you, which doesn't happen often, but things like that can happen. Like you said before, you might not know what's happening in someone's personal life, or the kind of day they're having, what's going on at home. So when I'm getting frustrated and angry with my staff, I like to just sit back, and if I have a message typed out that's quite not mean, I'd never really type up or send any mean messages or do that on calls or anything, but I definitely like to take some time and just, I guess, reflect on whatever it is I'm about to say to them. I had a situation, I think it was 3-4 weeks ago now. I had an employee do something that really, really pissed me off, and I had to, like, I knew just I had to, like you said, put my pride aside and deal with it like with zero emotion. And yeah, I had a pretty strong message typed out to this cleaner, and I knew if I waited at least for the rest of the day that I would have had a different response by the end of it, and I did. I rewrote what I was going to say, and since then, the relationship with that cleaner has gotten so much better. She's picked up her work. Her attitude has significantly increased. And I think that if I was just being emotional like I was when I typed up that initial message, that she wouldn't be on the team anymore and things would have gotten sour very quickly. So that's another lesson that I forgot to mention before, but it's been very important to me.
I like the fact that you brought up that the relationship got stronger as well, because that is so true. Like there's been a lot of times where, again, similar to this, I've had ill feelings toward an employee, or I've been frustrated about something, and I may have typed out a message that I thought to myself, like, hang on, let me just like sleep on this and see how I feel about it tomorrow. And literally every time you do something like that, you always will completely change the message the next day because there'll be less emotion tied to it. But there's been a lot of times where I've just like had that understanding and try to be diplomatic and get to the reason of why the situation is the way it is. And it always creates a stronger bond between like you and the customer, or you and the employee, or whoever it is. Same can be said about family and friends. Like if you're able to resolve conflict with someone, it's always going to strengthen the relationship. But on the other hand, if you're not able to deal with conflict and you just kind of brush it to the side or neglect it, then that in turn makes it worse. So sometimes just dealing with it head on and having a difficult conversation is the best way to go. But I think it was like episode 120. So like a few episodes ago, I talked about some of this stuff. I talked about those bad reviews I got a couple of years ago. I talked about how I responded then versus how I feel about it now. And it's like, if I just waited to respond and, I think one of the things I talked about was just type out a message or an email and then just let it sit overnight, sleep on it, come back to it, see how you feel. It's always going to be different. So yeah, being able to remove yourself from the emotion in decision-making is such a powerful move in business. I think it's like a superpower, really. So you've hit the nail on the head with that. Is there anything else in terms of, just you're obviously a very diligent operator now, and is there anything else on the topic of staff or even just like the way that you deliver your service and maintain quality control? Is there anything else that you've picked up that you could share with the audience that's helped you?
Yeah. Before I jump onto that, I just wanted to say something about what we were just talking about. I heard a story about Abraham Lincoln that he used to do the exact same thing. If he was mad at someone, he would write out a letter and then sleep on it. And at the end of his presidency, when he also got assassinated, he had a drawer in his desk just piled up of letters that he never sent, all just grilling whoever the person was. And yeah, after hearing that, I was like, okay, there's something to this. So yeah.
That's really cool, actually. I'm like a pretty big history buff, and I know a bit about Lincoln. I didn't actually know that, so that's really fascinating. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, that's all right. Sorry, what was your question before? Was it about like anything else in leadership that I've learned? Is that what you were alluding to?
Well, not even just leadership, but just in running the business. What's some advice that you could share with someone listening now who may be pretty early on in the journey, or maybe hasn't even started a business? Actually, I think let's go there. For the people that haven't started a cleaning business yet, that are looking to, what kind of advice could you give them now that you've gone through that and you built a business up into a pretty substantial size?
Just start. If you're listening to this podcast, you're obviously capable of something. If you're taking the time to listen to, we're basically an hour in now. If you're listening to this, you definitely have the ability to start a cleaning business. So you've obviously got that drive. You're listening to this. So yeah, I'd say just start. and you're gonna make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time still, and I imagine, Jason, you still making some mistakes here and there, but we learn from it, and that's how we get better. So yeah.
100%. Love that. And look, mistakes, you're not going to get to a point where you stop making mistakes. You just kind of make less mistakes. But the mistakes, like part of the word mistake is stake. And the stakes get higher and higher the bigger you get. So there's going to be bigger and bigger mistakes. And for me, there's been so many things that have happened recently. Like we've had our biggest month of replacing damaged stuff ever in the business. I think we've spent $4,000 out of pocket, so not even through insurance, because these are just small incidents, less than $500 each, that we've had to replace. So these are mistakes. We've had operational mistakes. We've accidentally, our time off system wasn't for management wasn't as good as what we had for staff, and we had 3 managers all take leave at the same time, and we didn't actually fully realize it until it was too late. So I'm always making mistakes, but you just have to get comfortable with making mistakes. And as you know, it's a necessary step on the way to getting to where you want to be. And I think that inability to embrace mistakes and failure is what stops people so cold in their tracks a lot of the time. And also just people being worried about what others around them are going to think. I can imagine there's a lot of people out there who maybe didn't start a business or gave up way too early because they're embarrassed by what people think about their lack of success early on, or even just the fact that it's a cleaning business. Then, obviously it's not the most glamorous business. People are going to have opinions about it. And so I reckon those are the two main factors that stop people before they ever really get the start. So, definitely what Ryan said. Just if you are on the fence about it, you just got to start. There's the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is right now. There's never going to be a better time than right now. You can't go back in time. If I could go back, I would have started earlier. That is literally my only regret. When people ask me, I'm like, man, I wish I started when I was 16 instead of 18. It's I can only imagine where I'd be now if I just had that extra 2 years in the beginning. So 100%, man. Is there anything else that you think is worth sharing? Any other light bulb moments or advice or experience, and maybe even mistakes that you've made along the way that you think would be worth sharing?
Connect with other business owners, especially in the cleaning industry or whatever industry you're in. I've got some very close friends who are in the cleaning industry. One of them his name's Ash from Advanced Commercial Cleaning. He's based just outside of Melbourne, and we actually met in Booked Out Cleaners, and he's become one of my best mates. We're constantly sharing value with each other, and there's a bunch of other cleaners that I'm friends with from Booked Out Cleaners and elsewhere, and just sharing value with each other has been so helpful to me, and knowing that someone is benefiting from you sharing something with them and vice versa, it's just such a great feeling. And when you get talking to someone who has similar dreams and goals to you and enjoys the game of business as much as you do, it's such a fun conversation to have, and you feel like you can just talk forever. I think, Jason, the first time we spoke on a Zoom call, it was just clicked. It just clicked. We just got talking about business, and you can see when someone is passionate about the same thing as you. So, definitely reach out to other business owners, people who are ahead of you, who you can learn from, and even people who are smaller than you. They might need your help, because you might be getting help from someone bigger. So the least you could do is help someone else out.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because even people that are smaller than you or earlier on in the journey, there's you can still learn a lot from them. You'll pick up little things that it might just be a reframe of something that's in your mind, or just something that you never even considered or thought about. And then you have the chance to implement that in your business, possibly even at a bigger scale. So there's always going to be things you can learn from others around you. And the community aspect is so important. It's what I always try to encourage people to do. I know that Steph and Jenna, who I interviewed on here just before this one, they also met inside Booked Out Cleaners, and they've got their own little circle of cleaning business owners now that they get on calls and they share value and experiences and strategies and all these things. And it's like really, really powerful. And that's the concept of a mastermind. It's when two or more people get together and they just talk about like a common shared interest or goal. And that's a lot of the time where the magic really happens. Like the big coaching containers that I'm in, like Success School, my favorite stuff in there where I get the most amount of value is from those mastermind sessions where I get to workshop and brainstorm with other business owners. So it's really, really important. I'm glad that you've been able to make good connections in the community. And like at the end of the day, we're just social creatures, man. We like to have people that we relate to. And it's why, you look at like in zoos all around the world, the zoos where people are like outraged about the treatment of the animals. It's where they like stick like a panda in an enclosure by itself and it has no other pandas that it can interact with and it looks depressed. And it's like, yes, if you were stuck in a cage by yourself with no one to talk to, you would feel the same way. And that's kind of what business can feel like. It can feel like you're in a cage with no one else that you can relate to and share things with. And it can be a pretty dark journey because like business is already like such a lonely place. But you do have that ability to just reach out to people and connect with others that are on a similar path to you. And it's really like, it's a magical thing. So I'm glad you brought that up. It's super important. And Ryan, man, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It was great to hear about your story and learn about your journey and what's been working for you. And obviously you're a great entrepreneur. You've gone from zero to like a very, very good sized business in a very short amount of time. You've built a team and, you're definitely well on the way to being able to take yourself out of the business. And, you've got that freedom already to do more of your sport, the kickboxing stuff, which is awesome as well. So yeah, it's just, it's great. And hats off to you, man. Congratulations on all the success you've achieved. And thank you so much for taking the time to come and chat with me.
Thank you so much for the kind words. And look, I do owe a lot of my success in business to you. I wouldn't have probably started this business if it wasn't for this podcast. So thank you, Jason.
Well, thanks, man. That means a lot, truly.